Hey guys, welcome to the next episode of the 1958 TR3 restoration in the Rusty Beauty's garage. And I'm just gonna give you a quick overview of what has been done so far. So we've done this side completely. I mean, we replaced the floor, the inner and outer seal, the door, and installed the fender and made the gaps pretty good here. In the last episode, we took out the floor, the seal, and everything from the other side, the rusted ones, and we only fitted the seal on the outside and the floor inside. They are still floating, they are not attached in any way. Because all the parts now start interfering with each other, and we want to make sure that we don't put a part somewhere where it's going to be a problem later for something else. So that is why I hung the door. We still have a big issue with it here that we need to deal with. I put the front fender, I put the bonnet, and now I'm also gonna put the front valance because that's where we left it last time. We had a huge gap here on this fender, and we have this line here being open too much here and touching here, and if we push the fender in, that line over there closes, but then we are under the bonnet here, and the holes, the mounting holes for the hardware here don't match. Even now you see where they are like halfway, so we still need to push out the whole fender here, but that's gonna make the gap big again, so we're dealing with that. The other side, the gap was perfect, but then I ended up moving the bonnet that way a little bit so we can close that side. That now also gives us too big of a gap here, but you can see here the mounting holes are offset to that side, so if we loosen this bolt that I have here and push this, it's gonna close the gap here in the front. The problem is here also, it is too big. I thought maybe it is a possibility to open this bonnet here a little bit, this curve. It has a big brace inside that we need to force somehow, but that's gonna help us here a little bit, but I don't know whether we should do that. I think maybe we should bring the bonnet back a little bit just to make this nice and even here. Also, the gap here now is bigger than there, so I think we need to reposition the bonnet again and try to adjust the body to the bonnet. But before I play way too much with the bonnet only to figure out that now we have to move everything again to fit the valance, I'm gonna bring the valance and I'm gonna install that as well, so we have all the components, at least the front of the car from the door forward. And when we have all the components installed here, then we're gonna start thinking of how to move each and every one in which direction and what to do so we can have perfect gaps, because that's where we're aiming. So without further ado, let's get crack-a-lacking. Okay, so the valance is installed, and actually, to be honest, it fits pretty good between the two fenders in the position that they were. I thought that it was going to be too tight or too loose, but it fitted pretty well, and this line matches pretty good here. But look at this. Dun dun dun. So I don't know what happened here, but here it is low, here it is high. I mean, the valance relative to the fender. And here, of course, it's a mess. This looks like stick welding to me. I don't know what it is, but we're gonna have to clean it up and make the flange solid. Actually, it bends, so I'm assuming there's a cut here somewhere. I'm surprised that actually I can force it in. There you go, it's fixed. Yeah, we're gonna have to take care of that. But look at all these waves here. That's gonna be a lot of work. And here it is all the way to the bar, the crossbar. So it is where it is, right? But look at that now. It is overlapping. So here, look, we have a gap here. And even on the other side, it's kind of almost okay. But in the center, it's overlapping. How is that even possible? And here, I moved it as far back as possible from the hinges. So the gap is as small as it could be. I'm not even sure if it's not touching somewhere, but it can be smaller than that. So we need to move the center of the valance somehow, or the whole valance, which means that we need to move the bar somehow, and then this gap here is going to be all over the place unless we modify the valance. That's also an option. But if we make a slice like this, push it and weld it, I know, right? As a beginning, I'm gonna see if I can bend these brackets very little. This I'm gonna have to loosen. I have one bolt here. God, I think it actually moved too much. Yep. We open the huge gap here again. Why can't I close it more than that? Yeah, this is mounted from underneath so it can be spaced, so it can go lower. That's not a problem. The problem is this gap is horrible, and this gap became too big now again. Okay, not great. Not great, but we're gonna figure it out. So obviously, or at least that's what it looks like to me, this bonnet is not from this car. Like, yeah, it needs to go down a little bit more here. Right now, the mechanism here, the latch is not allowing it to go down, but I can, actually, can I show you here? So you see how the mechanism is mounted. I can drop the whole mechanism down. I believe I can space it down. That's gonna give me the extra 1/4 inch here to go down. But when this goes down, this here and this here is gonna go way lower, but maybe we're gonna be able to bend these up, you know? I don't know, but here, look at this now. When this is very high right now, you see? So if we make it even with the other two components here, then we have trouble here. It becomes much lower than the valance. Here, height-wise, it's pretty much okay, but the problem is this gap now, you see, it became huge. And obviously we can't do anything with the fender anymore because the valance is trapped between the two fenders, so we can't move the fender anymore unless we move them both this way. Maybe that's an option, because I'd like to do that because of that opening over there. But then we're gonna ruin this gap, which right now it is wide. It's wider than what I'd like it to be, but it looks like that's the minimum it could be, because combined the two gaps are huge. This here is like horrible as well. Pretty wide here, pretty narrow here, pretty wide there again, so I don't know. It is an option to slice it here, push it in and weld it, but do we want to do that? I don't know. My main concern is here, and I took some measurements already, and what I think it is the actual bonnet is shorter on this side. I mean, from the center that way is different than from the center this way. So we have to figure it out by this center trim here. This center trim ends right here, but I extended the line a little bit, and here too. So it looks like I have it in the right place, right? So the center between this is gonna be my center of the bonnet. I already measured the center of the valance, so this is the center of the valance here, from here to here. It's 46 and 7/8, and this is 23 and 3/8 or 7/16 from the end to here. So that's the center of the valance. So let me measure this trim and see where the center of this trim is and whether it lines up with this center. Okay, I don't know how well you're gonna see, but you're gonna have to trust me. From this line to this line, this is 18 and 5/8. So 9 and 5/16. 9 and 5/16. And ta-da! They match pretty well actually. You see, very little difference. And if anything, the trim needs to go that way, but we don't want to move the bonnet that way, we want to move it that way. But anyway, so now let's see if this from the center of the trim to here is the same as from the center of the trim to there. 23 and a quarter. Have to measure it this way. 22 and 7/8. So 3/8 difference. And if we had 3/8 here, we were gonna have a pretty good gap. So out of the factory, this bonnet was not great. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Yep, that's what I'm thinking too. Anyway, we're gonna get there, but that's gonna be a lot of work. So if we have to do this here and the same there, you know what? I'd like to do one more sanity check. I'm gonna make a template of this curvature here from the trim to here, and I'm gonna compare it to the other one. Okay, so I made it to match this side like this. So here it matches, but here it's a little bit longer, so I'm gonna cut it to the trim. Okay, so it is pretty much this shape from the end of the bonnet to the end of the trim. Let's see the other side. But shape-wise, it's not too bad, except here we are like same thing, confirming the same thing. 3/8 or 5/16 are missing. The thing is though, this shape here matches the other side, so we don't want to cut it here because that's gonna distort the shape. If anything, it needs to be sliced here and open, you know. What are we supposed to do? Let's take another trial. So let's do, say, 9 inches from the end. Take the shape. Who bent my needles? I'm so protective of these two. Okay, that's the shape here. Let's see the other side. Okay, 9 inches. Yeah. So it's pretty close. I don't know what we're gonna do because I like this side, but this side is horrible. So, okay, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. As a beginning, we're gonna let it be. We can deal with this part separately because that doesn't affect much our door here, right? Our door, our seal, and all that. We are pretty good in this area. I just wanna, maybe what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this hardware here. It's gonna be hard now because how this hardware is supposed to be, the screw needs to be started on the fender and then through this slot inside. I don't know if you see it, but it is slot where you can go and put it on. But I'm gonna try through the hole on the other side, through this hole, to align the hardware maybe. I just want to see if I can pull this in, because that's gonna affect us here with the position of the fender, right? And then we're gonna continue with our alignment here on this side, the seal and the A post, the B post and the floor, so we can complete this side. And that I'm gonna let my brain work on in the middle of the night while I'm sleeping. Okay, that pulled it a little in the middle, and here we're gonna have a trim, right? So all the way to here we're pretty good, but here we still open the big gap. So I'm really tempted to drill these spot welds here, at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 I believe, and open this a little bit relative to this. We'll leave this where it is, and this we're gonna open a little bit. So that's a solution for that. We're not gonna do it right now, but if we have to, we can do that. Of course, we will see how that's gonna affect this curve here on the bonnet. But again, different story. For now, we're gonna leave it, and I'm coming to deal with this baby here. Okay, so with shimming the bottom end, the bottom hinge on the door, I was able to make this gap actually perfect. I love it. Like, it is nice and small everywhere. Now again, we have differences here, how far it sticks out and in, but that we can deal with separately. Now I'm concerned about this, and this is perfect all the way from top to bottom, because the rear end also raised a little bit and closed that gap at the top as well, and made this line a little bit straighter. I noticed when I was editing the previous video yesterday that this line was with a little V here, goes up and then down. Now it still has that, but that's because of the fender, I believe. Here the body line on top is a little bit higher, the fender is a little bit lower than the body line. But that's, you know, we have a trim here, like a bead, so I'm not worried about this difference here. It's gonna be hidden, and if you don't tell anyone, I won't tell either, so it's gonna be fine. So here, this gap, I managed to close the bottom. How? That's how. With a strap. So I pulled the bottom end forward, and that's easy to maintain there, because we're gonna have the bottom of the B post here that we're gonna have to weld to the inner seal. So as long as we can get it there, I know how to keep it there, right? So the bottom gap is perfect. The top gap though, there's nothing else that we can do other than adding a shim right there. I said that in the previous episode that I don't want to touch the shims. I want to try and make the body fit on the frame as it is right now, with the amount of shims as per the manual. But unfortunately, there's nothing else that I can do here, because this needs to close. And actually, I took a measurement, and I'll show you. Now, I'm gonna measure from the top, from this line here, the body line, to over there. Do you see that? Oh yeah, you see it. So I'm gonna align the corner of the laser with this body line here, and I'm gonna measure, where did it go? To right there. to that corner, and this is 2.5 1/4. And this side, if we do the same thing, align the corner with the body line. Oops. Okay. 2.5 5/8. So 2.5 5/8. From 2.5 1/4 to 2 that's quarter is 2/8 to 5/8. It's 3/8 difference. So that's exactly how much we want to close this, right? If we close this by 3/8, we're gonna be perfectly fine. Not that I need the two sides to be the same, but this is just telling me that it's not the door that is shorter or something, it is the B-post that needs to match. So we're gonna have to raise the rear end a little bit. Okay, so I added two small pads there, two of the rubber shims. I think they are about 3/16 each, so I added about 3/8, and I don't want to add more than that because it's gonna deform the whole rear end of the car. And here we're still not perfect. I mean, this now raised, so I can push it down. Actually, not much. So the bottom is still where it was, but the top is still open. So another trick in my sleeve is to remove one or two of the rubber pads under here, under these body mounts, you know. We have 4 now. So if we remove 2 or 1, so maybe we should remove, oops. So maybe we should remove 1, and that's gonna allow the middle of the car to drop down here. And as it's going down, the gap at the top is gonna close. So we should do that trick. I checked the other side, still good. That worries me that we might ruin the other side by adding shims on this side, but I think we're still good. So this is gonna be tricky now to add and remove pads from here, but I don't know, I'll try. Okay, I was able to remove one pad and I haven't even bolted it yet. And look, it looks much better now. Not sure if I put the bolts, if it is gonna go lower. I think it's gonna compress the pads a little bit. So you know what, I'm gonna put the bolts and let's see how that's gonna move. Actually, you can watch and tell me. That didn't move much, did it? But this one pad affected things pretty well. So I'm gonna remove one more. We have 4 there, right? So we're gonna remove one more and hopefully that's gonna give us a better gap here. All right, so that actually worked pretty well. So we still have a good gap here. And here at the top, maybe we should drop the door a little bit. Like, we have a little bit of room here to space the top end down this way, so we can close a little bit this gap and lower the rear end of the door very little, so this body line matches. That's gonna also make the gap more even, because more consistent, because now it is small at the bottom and big on the top. But if it goes down like that, it's gonna become pretty even. But also this here, I don't know if you can see, but all this here is lead all the way to the top. So I think we can grind a little bit out of the lead here, because it is sticking out here anyways. So we can grind a little bit of that and we're gonna make a perfect gap. So I'm pretty much relaxed, because in the beginning when we started working with this side, I was like, holy crap, how are we gonna do that? But actually it comes along. So we have 4 shims there, two shims here, and here, what do we have? We used to have two and I added two, so four shims here, four of the thin ones. Or no, one thick and one, I can see it now. Okay, so we used to have two thin ones, now we have three thin ones and one thick. That's how it's gonna be. So in this situation, I can actually start welding. I mean, I can start fixing things in place. Like I can put the bottom of the B-post here, which I have somewhere. Yeah, it's rolling down on the floor over there. I cleaned it up. So I can put it back on and tack it in place. I want to tack the A-post in place to make sure that it doesn't move anymore. And I can tack the floor here and there, here, and everywhere. The outer seal, like on the other side, we're gonna deal with it later. We can always adjust the outer seal to match our door and the front fender and all that. So, yay, we made pretty good progress today. I'm happy. There you go. Perfect gap. I'm pushing the door down a little bit to align this, and we have a perfect gap. Alright, so it's a few days later. In the weekend we had the garage rearranged so we could work with my son on his Miata. And today I'm back on the TR3, and in the meantime something occurred to me and something was brought to my attention too. So let's start by what was brought to my attention. Chef Tash let me know that I have to be careful with adding shims here because there's a bumper mount that goes through this hole here on the rear valance that also needs to go through this hole on the frame, and as we can see here, we are way too far. So this is not actually a solution to our problem here with the door, which we thought that we have solved. So we are back on square one here. So that's the one thing. And the other thing that occurred to me, that's actually a positive thing, is here with this gap. I actually started editing a little bit this video that you're currently watching, and when I was doing the measurements here and all that, it occurred to me that when I measured the whole valance from here to this gap, it was 46 and 7/8. Then we measured the bonnet and we measured the two halves separately, and I believe one was 22 and a quarter. Let's measure it again because I forgot now. So that's 23 and a quarter here, and this was 22 and 7/8. Right? So when I was editing the video, it occurred to me that this adds up to 46 and an 8, let's say. And the whole valance is 46 and 7/8. So the difference is only 3/4. And 3/4, when divided in the two gaps, it should give me 3/8 of a gap, which should be fine. So something doesn't add up here. So we should have 3/8 of a gap in both sides, right? Which is perfect. I'm happy with 3/8 of a gap. This is 3/8. If I have the same gap here, I would be happy. However, I have a much bigger gap here. So how's that even possible? And then it occurred to me, well, this bonnet is making a much bigger turn, right? So that's why it has the same length, but the two ends are closer together because it's making a bigger radius. So maybe that's what's going on here. If we, in the first place, we need to move the latch here so it allows it to go down, but then this is going to go too far down and this is going to go too far down. But then if we somehow manage to straighten this curve here and raise these up again and there, that's going to stretch it. You know what I mean? Maybe even here we need to open this a little bit, because when this is lined up here, the corner is too high. So then we might be able to bend this a little bit, and we will see what's going to happen here. But I'm pretty sure that when we make the bonnet curve match the valance curve, then that's going to close this gap here. However, there's a pretty wide brace here inside that we need to reshape, and that's going to be a disaster. But if that's going to bring my gaps to perfection, I will play with that brace inside. If I have to, I'm going to slice it, open it, and weld it. And you know what I mean? Or cut a V in it and close it and weld it. Whatever it needs to be done. If I have to do multiple slices on that brace, I'm going to do it, just so we can have perfect gaps. And I'm sure we can make that happen. Like I said, here to close this gap, we're going to drill those welds, and we're going to open the scuttle. Somebody commented in my previous video, it's not a saddle, it's a scuttle. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move the scuttle, and we're going to redo the spot welds here, or the plug welds. So that's encouraging about the front part. I told you that my brain is going to come up with something while I'm sleeping. But we're going to leave that for another video. I think I'm going to play a little bit here with this situation now, because if we have to bring that down, that's going to open this gap. So this means maybe now we have 2 of the pads removed from here, so maybe we should remove 1 more, so this can go down and that can go down as well. Because also, looking from here, okay, we have way too much stuff here. Looking from here, it looks like that corner, the rear corner of the car, is too high, right? Is it, or is it just my eyes? I think it is. So that also tells me that that end needs to go down where it was. We raised it too high. Okay, so I'll figure out something here, and I'll bring you back. All right, I removed 1 thick and 2 of the thin pads, and there's only 1 there right now. And we have a bolt that goes through. But the good thing is that this bolt actually, I just realized, it's not horizontal. The tube inside is actually going down on an angle. So maybe we can afford putting 1 more pad. So I'll try with 1 more as well. Oh, and that's what happened here by removing all these 3 pads. So let's add 1 more again and see. Okay, so I added back again the 2nd pad, and now we are back where we were, and this bolt now fits perfectly. So the 2 pads that I added, a thick and a thin pad, I just removed again. So back to square one. But you see, we were about to make a mistake here, and thanks to Chef Tash, who has experience with these TR3s, we were able to avoid it. So unfortunately, we are still not in a great shape here. So I'm gonna have to try again now by removing 1 more pad from here, and we're gonna remain with only 1. So there's gonna be 4 there and 1 here, and we will see how that's gonna affect everything. Let's look at this situation now. Yeah, that looks better now, doesn't it? I mean, this line, the scuttle with the rear end, they look more parallel. I know I have stuff here, but you know, it looks good to me. All right, I cheated a little bit more. No, I didn't cheat. I added a shim right here. So a thick shim. There was only 1 here, and now there's 2. I loosened these 2 as well. I haven't added anything else there, but I guess I'm gonna have to add 1 thin one, because you see there's space now. But that helped with this gap. I mean, it closed the top pretty well, and the bottom is a little bit tight, but as you know, I showed you here, this is all lead. So we can shave that a little bit with my body file, and that's gonna make this gap good. This one, it's not great. I mean, it is nice and small at the top, but at the bottom it's almost touching. But like I said, we're gonna have to change the bottom part of this fender, so we're gonna have to adjust it. Here I can tell that before even it wasn't matching great. These holes, you see, they drilled smaller holes to the side to fit it, and now it fits as it is. It fits on the smaller holes. So what I think I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna finally repair the bottom of that B-post so I can tack it in place. I wanna start tacking things in place in a way that I might remove the tacks later, but I wanna start making everything more sturdy, because now clamps everywhere and everything, and it is like a ratchet strap inside, and I'm not sure what is holding what and when I unclamp it and what's gonna happen. So I wanna start tacking it in place, and then I'm gonna cut the bottom of this fender and I'm gonna tack in place the new one, so we can adjust this gap as well. And then we're gonna deal with this part here, the front. I think this bonnet situation here, this is the brace that I was talking about, but I think this bonnet situation here is not affecting our gaps there. I think that's, we are where we are with fenders, with everything, so we're gonna leave it for another time. But this part here I'm pretty happy with right now, so I'm gonna tack it in place this way, and I'm gonna remove all the clamps to make sure that it stays that way, and then we're gonna deal with the fender. Okay, here in the engine bay I was gonna put more pads to fill this gap, but look at this. This is like so flimsy. This is not even holding anything, like it's not a body mount, it's just holding the fender, the inner fender, from moving left and right, because look. So I'm just gonna tighten the bolt and that's gonna compensate. So not adding anything here. All right, so I tacked in place the bottom of the B-post, the same one that I cut off. I left a little bit of a gap here, because that's the thickness of my blade, cutting blade, when I cut it off. I don't wanna put it too high. And it is tucked in place, tucked to the seal. The strap is now removed. The A-post is also tucked in place here. The floor I tucked in few places, like here. And now there's no straps, no clamps. The car is holding itself together, and I'm pretty happy with all the gaps except down here, but this is gonna be our next step. I think we're gonna cut off the bottom of this fender and we're gonna install the patch that we have. Again, we're gonna tack it in place to make nice gap here. Then we can even fit the outer seal and take care of the bottom gap here. And this side is gonna be done. Also, like I said multiple times, we're gonna unweld this scuttle from here. We're gonna open it a little bit and we're gonna weld it again to close this gap. And we're gonna be kind of ready with this side. It's gonna be only welding after that. I just wanna fit everything and make sure that everything is matching before I go ahead and weld everything. So maybe once everything is tucked here, and including this patch and that, then we might go and do what we said we're gonna do with the bonnet. So we figure out even the front end here, and we can go ahead and weld everything and deal with other repairs like the battery box, which we have the new one over there, all the dents and stuff like that that we need to take care of. But I really want to jump ahead of myself a little bit and align all the panels. I want to make sure that everything aligns well before I start welding. Even the floor, I'm not going to weld any more than that now. I'm going to probably tack it in a few more places so nothing moves, but I'm not going to weld it completely. So anyway, this video is becoming way too long, so we're going to stop here. I think we are at the point where now we know that we solved most of the alignment problems, and the ones that we haven't, I think we have a solution for. So we're pretty good to end the video here. So that's gonna be it. Stay tuned for the next one, which I gave you a preview of before I even started working on it, but that's the plan for it. Maybe that's the plan for the next 2 or 3 or 5, I don't know how many videos, but at least we have a plan. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for commenting, subscribing, sharing. Thanks for commenting, subscribing, sharing, and supporting the channel. It is really, really appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.